All right, today we're going to dive in and decode one of the most influential sets of food rules in all of human history. I mean, this is a system that has shaped diets and entire cultures for thousands of years, and it all comes from this one ancient text.
Have you ever stopped to wonder why some foods are totally forbidden? Why is one animal considered, a delicacy, but another one that seems pretty similar is just completely off limits? Well, for literally millions of people, the answer goes way back. It's found in a set of ancient and incredibly specific instructions.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basics, what clean and unclean even mean. Then we'll go through the animal kingdom, just like the text does, land, water, and air. And finally, we'll get to the why, the big idea behind all of it.
All right, so where does all this come from? We're heading straight to the source, the 11th chapter of the book of Leviticus, right from the Hebrew Bible. And this isn't just some obscure chapter. It's a really foundational text that lays out this whole detailed framework for what's clean and what's unclean.
And you've got to understand, the text presents these as direct instructions, given right to the ancient Israelites. These weren't just, helpful hints or dietary suggestions. Nope, these were divine commandments. They drew a hard line in the sand between which animals you could eat and which ones you had to avoid, no exceptions.
Okay, so let's dive into the details, shall we? We'll start on dry land. Now, you might be thinking this is going to be super complicated, right? But for land animals, it actually boils down to a surprisingly simple two-part test. So here it is, the big test. For a land animal to get the green light, to be clean, it has to do two things. First, it has to chew the cud. And second, it must have a completely split hoof, what's called a cloven hoof. The key is it has to have both. If it only has one, it fails the test. The text even gives us some really clear examples. Take the camel. It chews the cud, check, but its hoof isn't fully cloven, so it's out. And then there's the pig. It has the cloven hoof, but it doesn't chew the cud. And that, of course, is what makes it one of the most famously unclean animals out there.
Okay, so that's the land. Now let's wade into the water. The basic idea is actually the same. We're still looking for a clear two-part rule, but obviously the things we're looking for are going to be totally different. When it comes to anything living in the seas, the rivers, you name it, the rule is maybe even simpler. It needs to have two things, fins and scales. That's it. If it's missing one of them, think about shellfish or eels or even a catfish, it's completely off the menu. And listen to the language the text uses here for the ones that don't make the cut. It doesn't just call them unclean, it calls them an abomination.
Wow, that word abomination, it's just so powerful. It means something that's truly detestable, something you should view with actual disgust. So we're not talking about a mild dietary preference here. This kind of language signals a really, really deep and serious prohibition.
All right, now this next part is really interesting because the whole logic just flips on its head. When we get to the creatures of the air, the text doesn't give us a rule for what we can eat. Instead, it does the total opposite.
So yeah, instead of a checklist of features to look for in a clean bird, what we get is basically a do not eat list, a blacklist, if you will. And when you look closely at what's on that list, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. It's packed with birds of prey and scavengers.
So you'll see things like the eagle, the vulture, every kind of raven, the owl, the hawk. You get the picture. Pretty much if it hunted other animals or ate dead things, it was forbidden. And here's a little bit of trivia for you. The bat is also included right here in this list of forbidden fowls.
Okay, last but not least, we have this sort of catch-all category, creeping things. And this is where the rules expand in a major way. It's not just about what you can eat anymore. A whole new idea comes into play. Becoming unclean just by touching something. So the text basically declares that most things that creep along the ground are unclean. And this is a huge category. We're talking about everything from a weasel and a mouse all the way to a lizard or a mole. Now, there are a couple of specific exceptions, like certain kinds of locusts, but for the most part, yeah, this whole category is a no-go.
And this is where you can really see how these rules would have been a part of everyday life. It went way beyond just mealtimes. If you even touched the carcass of an unclean animal, you yourself became ritually unclean until the evening. And the only way to get clean again, you had to wait until sunset and wash your clothes. It was a whole process.
Okay, so we've got all these specific rules, these lists, all these different classifications, and it all leads to the big question, right? Why? Why go through all this trouble? What's the ultimate point of dividing up the entire animal kingdom into clean and unclean?
Well, the amazing thing is the text doesn't leave us hanging.
It doesn't make us guess. After spelling out all those rules, it gives a really clear and honestly pretty profound reason for why they exist.
And that's it, right there. That's the absolute heart of this whole chapter. You know, you could argue that these laws had some health benefits, and maybe they did. But the reason the text gives us, it isn't about hygiene, it's about holiness.
So making these choices about food every single day was a constant reminder for the Israelites of who they were, of their unique identity. Every meal, these distinctions between clean and unclean reinforced a much bigger idea, that they were a people set apart. They were called to be holy in the same way that their God was holy.
And all of this really leaves us with a fascinating thought, doesn't it? We've just looked at this one ancient example, but it really makes you think. How do rules about something as fundamental as food continue to draw lines, build communities, and shape who we are, right here, right now, even today?